Andrew McKenna and Patrick Ryan, I always get them confused, own just over 19% of the Bears. They're the only non-McCaskies to own, have an ownership stake in the Bears. So they have like 19.7, and I believe Virginia McCaskey has 80% or 80.3, something like that. So what is interesting is that the NFL owners have made it okay now to allow a private equity firm ownership in an NFL team. They are the last of the major sports leagues. The NFL, by the way, is the largest, most profitable sports league in the world.
Yes.
Not soccer. The
It's
largest, most
football,
profitable sports league in the world. And they are the last to allow private equity firms to take up to a 10% stake in the team. So it's 10%, not 20%. So immediately when I heard that the NFL owners had agreed to this a few weeks back, I thought, well, there's a cash flow option for the Chicago Bears in building their stadium. So if the average NFL team is now valuated at $5.5 billion, and oh, by the way, the Cowboys are $10 billion.
Of course.
$5.5 billion. The target for a private equity firm, I was just explaining this to Dionne in the break, that they're like, think of like a house flipper, someone who buys a rundown house, they fix it up, and then they flip it for a profit, right? That's basically, in very, very easy way to understand, what a private equity firm does. So they would prefer an underperforming team. What more underperforming team can you think of in the NFL than the Chicago Bears? They have a grand city, a great fan base. They are the number one team in the third largest market in the United States. And yet they have underperformed with just one playoff win in the last 10 years. So immediately I thought, oh, that is the Bears absolutely. And oh, by the way, they want to build a new stadium.
Right.
And can they use $500 million? Yeah, they could use $500 million, which would be a 10% stake in this team if they were valued at the average of $5.5 billion. They could use that cash flow towards the stadium. So Cranes came out with an article about this, and saying that the NFL, though, has put some stipulations on private equity firms coming in. And one of them is that you must hang on to your ownership for at least 6 years. So you can't flip your ownership within 6 years. Private equity, let's see, I'm trying to see what they would want. Well, in Chicago, I mean, we have multiple private equity firms like, Melody Hobson at Ariel Investment. She is the co-CEO. They already have an ownership stake in the Chicago Sky.
Oh, wow.
Melody Hobson, already St. Ignatius alum, by the way. She's the one who is married to George Lucas of Star Wars fame. She is already has an ownership stake in the Denver Broncos. So that there would have to be, with a group like Ariel Investments, they are just one of many private equity firms in Chicago that I would think would be interested in the Chicago Bears. And what better than to have a female ownership with someone that would have 10% stake in the team? To me, it sounds amazing, right? Well, we started asking some friends of ours in this private equity landscape.
Arena? Yeah.
Oh, it's already hot discussion.
Really?
And not just within the private equity firm, but that there is a not so quiet group that is putting together a group that is interested in buying as large of a share of the Bears that they'd be interested in.
Yeah.
So you don't have to just be a private equity firm for 10%. What about the two octogenarians that I was talking about, Patrick Ryan and Andrew McKenna own almost 20%. So I would think if their estates, they are both in their late 80s, early 90s. Virginia McCaskey is 101 years old.
Mhm.
So that would be almost 20% that there might be an interest if the board of directors for the Chicago Bears approved the estates of Patrick Ryan and Andrew McKenna selling their 19.7% interest in the team. That then would bring them not just 500 million.
The extra money.
There's
they
the
would
billion.
Need. Yep. Mm-hmm.
There is the billion.
Interesting.
So, and I, from what I have heard, it is not a secret at all.
Wow.
I don't know who is behind, and I'm trying to find out more about who might be behind it, but I find it very interesting because I think that since the Bears have already taken huge steps forward with the structure of their front office already
Yes.
in the last year and a half, it would mean an even larger step forward getting into not only the private equity interest, but potentially new ownership stakes in the Chicago Bears.
That's interesting what you said. You know what I got? It's not. I'm getting to my point here. Starting with the media guide, right? I got the new media guide, and what you just said about restructuring and the kind of diversity they brought in, I noticed it instantly.
Immediately.
The photos of the people who work in that front office now is much more diverse, lots more women, lots more, you know what I mean? Like
African Americans,
yes,
men
yes.
and women,
in
absolutely,
different
yeah.
roles and leadership roles. And I find that very interesting. And so that is notable what you said about that woman who could have a stake in the Bears.
Melody Hobson.
Melody Hobson.
I mean, she's amazing. She's brilliant. I find this fascinating, and I cannot wait to hear more of the names that I'm sure they're trying to keep it quiet. But listen, the McCaskies, George, who is the acting person from the family with the team now. I don't know how old is George. I'm going to guess, is he late 60s? But his brothers are in their 70s.
Right.
So, this is Brian's the youngest. I know Brian's in his 60s. So it's interesting to see that maybe they are taking a greater interest in selling a portion of the team to some investors that maybe are 2024 and more modern day investors than just the family business. So I find this very interesting.
I do too. And I know that Kevin Warren is going to exhaust every creative option he can think of to make this happen, and getting this vote passed by the NFL owners to have this option. I feel like he's pounding the pavement to try to figure it out.
Oh, let's go out to Highland Park. William is on the phones and can help shed a little light on the whole private equity industry. I'm talking as a civilian, William, so I hope I tried to explain it as best I could.
Your explanation was awesome. It was a fabulous analogy. That's exactly the way private equity models deals. The good news is that, as you talked about, that NFL imposed restriction of 6 years fits well within the way we look at a deal. Generally, you look to flip within 5 to 7 years. So that 6 year doesn't inhibit any potential investment. I think the limitation here, you went down the list of the ownership. They're a buy and hold. They aren't interested in selling, but I think the opportunity, as you say, if looking for cash flow, it wouldn't be a private equity group because we generally prefer to have a controlling stake. But no, but you're still spot on, because think about the Guggenheim individuals who bought the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yep.
In a very profitable deal because of the other revenue sources. So I think the opportunity would be, if there are individuals within private equity who have sufficient funding or access to funding to be able to come in with that number you suggested, and you did a great back of the envelope valuation. So roughly 10% at that average valuation. The difficulty would be, have to be someone who's comfortable without having control. That's going to be the limitation, because anytime you come in with fresh capital, you're going to want the ability to control And those owners that you talked about are very comfortable, unless, as you say, as it starts to get to a multi-generational phase, would the next generation, as they do succession planning, be interested in doing it? So
Right.
great show, great analysis. This is a fascinating, and as a Bears fan, I hope that you can help convince them to do some transition.
William, let me ask you a question. With your experience in private equity, what difference would it make for the Bears if they were to sell a 10% stake? Let's just say that, with them being on the lakefront in a stadium that the Park District owns, as opposed to out in Arlington Heights, where there are other options for revenue coming in, like building hotels and apartments and things like that.
You nailed it again. It's like, go back to the time when the San Diego Padres built their new stadium. That was with a single ownership that did a broader development, or like the Cubs are doing. When you're looking at an investment, you want to find a way to enhance the legacy revenue streams. So it's exactly what you said. Buy more than the space you need and convert those to revenue generating opportunities. And hopefully, as you point out, with a fresh source of capital and possibly some fresh thinking, then that's going to be a way to really convert this into a profitable and more successful investment.
That's fantastic. William, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you picked up the phone to call us and chime in with your experience. We appreciate that.
It's a great show. We love it. Keep it up.
Thanks, William. Thank you. It helps understand
so clear.
it.
Yeah,
right?
Now it made a lot more sense.
Because it can be.
I was taking notes, William, by the way.
It can be really confusing.
Yeah, no, it is. And as someone who does not think in that space, like my brain does not function in that space. So like I needed that kind of explanation to understand.
Well, I think it also throws a very interesting little curve into this whole stadium plans now.
And
And
where they will go. And
right.
As he was saying, with fresh thinking and creating those other revenue streams that would come in. I mean,
if you're an investor coming in and you want to buy 10% or 20%, you want to know, where's my revenue stream?
Yes. What's coming back?
What else do we have? And he said, like, buy more than you need. And then you develop it. They're not going to have that opportunity on the lakefront.
Right.
So
there's nothing extra to get.
Very interesting. And Cranes always does a great job. They are on top of it. They are like my #1 news source now. I love Cranes.
I have known Danny Ecker for a very long time, and he's wonderful. Very talented writer.
They do a great job.